Good evening. Welcome to Kenya News Update today. I'm your host, and we begin with a developing diplomatic story that places Nairobi at the center of complex global power dynamics. On Friday, February 20th, 2026, Foreign Affairs Principal Secretary Korir Singh OI held a closed-door meeting with Russian Ambassador to Kenya, Vsevolod Tikashenko. The stated agenda: strengthening bilateral ties and addressing the fate of Kenyans caught in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. But this meeting, coming just weeks before a planned high-level visit to Moscow, raises critical questions about Kenya's foreign policy trajectory under President William Ruto's administration and its implications for Kenya's traditional Western partnerships. Tonight, we dive deep into the details, the context, and the potential fallout. We'll analyze the timing, the regional backdrop of crises in Sudan and Ukraine, and what this pivot, if that's what it is, means for Kenya's economy and security. This is a 12-minute special report. Let's start with the official narrative. In a statement released after the meeting, Principal Secretary Singh OI confirmed the discussions focused on two main pillars. First, the logistical and substantive preparations for Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi's planned official visit to Moscow in March 2026. This would be one of the highest-level Kenyan delegations to Russia in recent years. Second, the talks addressed what Singh OI termed key diplomatic issues, with a specific mention of concerns over Kenyans affected by the Russia-Ukraine war. While the exact number was not disclosed in the statement, our sources within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs indicate the government is tracking approximately 120 Kenyan nationals currently in Ukraine, primarily students and a small number of professionals, whose safety and potential evacuation routes are a growing concern. The meeting lasted for nearly 2 hours, from 10 a.m. to 11:45 a.m., at the ministry's offices in Nairobi. However, to understand the full weight of this diplomatic engagement, we must zoom out. The meeting occurred against a backdrop of two major, concurrent global conflicts where Russian influence is a central factor. In Eastern Europe, the war in Ukraine entered its 5th year this month. Just a day before the Nairobi meeting, on February 20th, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky gave an interview to a FP where he made a bold declaration. He stated Ukraine is not losing the war, claiming Ukrainian forces have reclaimed hundreds of square kilometers in a new counteroffensive. More provocatively, Zelensky suggested that European troops should deploy right on the front line after any future ceasefire, a statement that signals a hardening stance and a rejection of any frozen conflict. This context is crucial. Kenya's outreach to Russia happens as Kyiv is signaling a need for more, not less, Western support to maintain its defensive and offensive operations. Simultaneously, nearly 4,000 kilometers to the northwest, the crisis in Sudan continues to spiral. A UN independent fact-finding mission recently released a damning report on the fall of al-Fashir in North Darfur, describing atrocities with the hallmarks of genocide. The report details mass killings, systematic sexual violence, and the deliberate destruction of civilian infrastructure. Critics, including The Guardian Africa, argue these horrors were entirely predictable, accusing Western governments of prioritizing elite bargains over civilian lives. Russia's Wagner Group, now reconstituted under other entities, has been a key military supporter of the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, in Sudan, providing weapons and tactical advice in exchange for gold mining concessions. This creates a direct link. Russian-backed forces are implicated in a potential genocide that Kenya, as a regional leader and host to peace talks, is desperately trying to resolve. So, Kenya's foreign ministry is engaging Russia on one issue, while Russian proxies are fueling a humanitarian catastrophe in a neighboring region where Kenya has significant peacekeeping and diplomatic interests. This is the complex web Principal Secretary Singh OI is navigating. Let's examine the economic dimension. Why might Kenya be seeking closer ties with Moscow? The data suggests a relationship with significant untapped potential. According to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, total trade between Kenya and Russia in 2025 amounted to just 18.7 billion shillings. Kenyan exports to Russia, primarily tea, coffee, and cut flowers, were a mere 2.1 billion shillings. In contrast, imports from Russia, dominated by wheat and steel, totaled 16.6 billion shillings. This leaves Kenya with a substantial trade deficit of 14.5 billion shillings. Proponents of deeper engagement argue this imbalance can be corrected. They point to Russia as a vast market for Kenyan agricultural products and a potential source of investment, particularly in energy and infrastructure. There is also the lingering issue of the 50 billion shilling loan from Russia for the construction of a nuclear power plant, a deal initiated years ago that has stalled amid geopolitical tensions and financing challenges. Reviving such a project could be on the agenda for Mudavadi's March visit, but this potential economic calculus must be weighed against Kenya's existing, and far larger, partnerships. The United States and the European Union collectively represent Kenya's largest trading partners and sources of development aid. In the 2024/2025 financial year, the U.S. provided over 120 billion shillings in development assistance through various agencies. The EU and its member states committed another 95 billion shillings. Furthermore, critical security cooperation, including training, intelligence sharing, and counterterrorism support, flows primarily through Western channels. The risk, as analysts see it, is that a visible warming of relations with Moscow could strain these ties, especially with the United States, where President Donald Trump has adopted an America First foreign policy that is transactional and demands alignment. A move perceived as tilting towards Russia could trigger a reassessment of support in Washington. This is the tightrope the Kenyan government is walking, exploring new opportunities without jeopardizing foundational relationships. The timing of the Singh-Tikashenko meeting is also noteworthy when viewed through a global lens. On the same day, February 20th, a separate but symbolically significant meeting was taking place in Israel. The founder of Anduril Industries, a major U.S. defense technology giant, was reportedly in Tel Aviv for a secret meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Anduril is at the forefront of autonomous drones and AI-driven battlefield systems, much of which is being tested and deployed in current conflicts. This meeting underscores the deep, technology-driven military integration between the U.S. and its allies. Meanwhile, in Nairobi, Kenya's top diplomat was sitting down with the representative of a nation that is the primary target of those very Western defense systems. The contrast couldn't be starker. It highlights the bifurcating world order, a Western bloc led by the U.S., and an alliance of states including Russia, China, and Iran. Kenya's engagement suggests a desire not to be fully ensconced in either bloc, but to practice a form of agile, multi-aligned diplomacy. What are the immediate next steps? All eyes are now on the planned visit by Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi to Moscow in March. The agenda is likely to be broad. We can expect discussions on three key areas. First, the conflict in Ukraine and the specific issue of Kenyan nationals. Kenya will likely seek assurances and cooperation for their safe passage, if needed. Second, trade and investment. Kenya will push for greater market access for its goods and seek clarity on stalled projects like the nuclear plant. Third, regional security, particularly regarding Sudan. Kenya may attempt to leverage its relationship to urge Moscow to pressure the RSF to cease hostilities and engage in good faith peace talks. The success of this visit will be measured not by signed memoranda alone, but by whether it yields tangible results without provoking a diplomatic backlash from other quarters. So, what does this all mean for the average Kenyan? The implications are multifaceted. On the positive side, successful diversification of trade partners could open new markets for farmers and create jobs. Cheaper imports of key commodities like wheat from Russia could theoretically ease the cost of living. On the security front, if Kenya can act as an honest broker and use its Russian channel to help quell the fire in Sudan, it would be a major foreign policy victory that enhances regional stability. However, the risks are substantial. The biggest is economic. If Western partners perceive a strategic shift, development funding and preferential trade agreements like the African Growth and Opportunity Act, a GOA, with the U.S., which granted duty-free access for thousands of Kenyan products worth over 80 billion shillings in exports last year, could come under threat. Security cooperation could also become more conditional. Furthermore, aligning closer with Russia, a country under severe international sanctions, complicates Kenya's financial transactions and could affect the stability of the Kenyan shilling. In conclusion, the meeting between Principal Secretary Ko-Reer Singh OI and Ambassador Vsevolod Tikashenko is far more than a routine diplomatic exchange. It is a microcosm of Kenya's challenging navigation of a fractured world. The government is attempting to assert its strategic autonomy, address immediate humanitarian concerns for its citizens, and pursue economic opportunities wherever they may arise. This pragmatic approach is understandable for a nation facing high debt, a cost of living crisis, and regional instability. However, the path of multi-alignment is fraught with peril. It requires exquisite diplomatic skill to avoid the pitfalls of perceived betrayal by long-standing allies. As Prime Cabinet Secretary, Mudavadi prepares for his trip to Moscow next month, the Ruto administration must have a clear-eyed view of the potential costs and benefits. The ultimate test will be whether Kenya can strengthen its hand globally without weakening its position at home. The world is watching to see if Nairobi can successfully chart this independent course, or if it will be forced to choose a side in the new Cold War. For Kenya News Update today, this has been a 12-minute deep dive. Subscribe to Kenya News Update today for more in-depth analysis.